Hello and welcome to Galactic Real Talk, where galactic wisdom meets real business. And if you don't know me, I'm Bianca. I'm a galactic channel and a marketing business owner. And I love fusing my multidimensionality into the real world. And you can do that too. And that's what I'm so passionate about speaking about. And I've got the most incredible guest today, Louise Platt, who is a galactic and intuitive astrologer. And she's here to speak about all things galactic astrology. So, welcome, Louise. Welcome to the show. Welcome. And I would love it if you would just introduce yourself and let us know about what is galactic astrology, because I'm sure not everybody's heard of that.
No, absolutely not. And neither had I yeah, going back 3.5 years, I'd never heard of it either. So, my business is called Spiral Bright Insight, and I basically work with, I guess, for me, astrology is my tool. So it's my way to access insight and information and understanding of what is going on. It's kind of how I translate the energies. But so I'm using astrology, which I'm sure most people, are fairly familiar with. And then when we sort of bring in galactic astrology, galactic astrology uses traditional astrology as a foundation, but then adds in sort of layers upon layers of what I would call maybe more cosmic quantum type energy. So, talking about the fixed stars and black holes and different nebula, and we can plot those into the chart as most people would know it, and then see how those kind of fixed star and quantum energies are, I guess, interacting with our blueprint, how they're activating us, how they're supporting us. And when I talk about fixed stars, I'm referring to like star constellations, for example, Orion or Sirius or Pegasus and Polaris, the North Star. So kind of these patterns in the sky that are timeless. They're called fixed stars because they don't move in the same way that the planets in our solar system sort of move all the time. They are timeless, and because of that, they have this beautiful wisdom that they're able to share with us. And the way I work with the fixed stars is really tuning into their archetypes and what they represent and the messages that they have, and then really being able to translate that in terms of what's going on in your birth chart and how those fixed stars are interacting with the planets in your birth chart at the time of your birth. And yeah, it just takes our awareness and our understanding beyond our solar system. So if you think of that the human kind of life is very 3D, this is taking it way beyond there, out to different and higher levels of consciousness, and really starting to give us a perspective that kind of moves us away from this is human, this is material world, and increasing the consciousness and our awareness of how we are so much more than just this human body, and how yeah, it's like a big sort of jigsaw puzzle and how all those pieces are playing out together. So yeah, it's I think it's just about expanding consciousness and awareness and giving you a completely different perspective, which not everyone's necessarily ready for. But when you start seeking, when you start looking, it's like there's just so much yeah, wisdom there that we can call on. So
I
that is kind of, yeah.
I loved it when I had a session with you and I learned about my galactic astrology. And I think the biggest thing I took away from it was this, and I think you've mentioned this is common, it's like this validation of what I knew
Yes.
to be the truth for me, and that maybe isn't always conventional, in terms of the way that we see ourselves or understand ourselves. But actually, it was so validating for me to hear there's a lot of things I understand that I'm here for because I've heard it through my guides, or I just feel it in my bones. But when you see it like that, you see it mapped out, it sort of explains why we are how we are, and it allows, I guess, it gives further permission. I don't think you need permission, but it says, yes, this is where you're supposed to go, this is the direction. And a lot of things that in the background of my mind, I've been thinking I'm supposed to go this way. It just confirmed it. And so I found it really helpful. And I think really timely for me when we had our session as well, because it was just like at a
Yeah.
crossroads for me where I was like, I just need to know, is this the direction? And it really just firmed that up for me.
Yeah, yeah. I think I always describe my work as it's like I'm holding up the mirror so that you can see yourself, because I'm all I'm sharing is it's kind of your blueprint, and I'm using the language of astrology to translate that, because it's the planets and the stars and the cosmic energies, they speak to me. But ultimately it's, you know it, your higher self knows it, and it's just I'm able to kind of hold up this, I guess, yeah, it is like a mirror, so I can reflect back your truth. Because it's not something that we necessarily come in with. We don't have that guidebook saying, this is what you're here to do and this is how you're going to do it, and it's like, but it's all there, it's in the blueprint, and it's just being able to have access to that. And it's also about divine timing. So obviously, we've connected at the perfect time, and whenever I do a chart for someone, there is always something really significant in terms of the transits, because as well as birth charts, I also look at the transits and how the stars are kind of interacting with what's going on for us collectively as well, and translating that. But I see it as I'm accessing the same information as you are, and I know we're going to get on to talk about that in this conversation, but I'm just using astrology as my tool, and it's because I speak, that's my language, that's how I understand, and that's how I receive my insight and my kind of and the messages. And yeah, so I mean it's phenomenal, really. And like I said, I'd never heard of it sort of going back 3.5 years. And then when it kind of came into my field, I was like, oh my God, yeah, this is what I've been looking for, because I had been searching for a long time for, what I describe as my niche. I need a niche, I need a niche. And yeah, and then it was like, here it is. But it felt like it took a while to show up, but it was perfect timing as it happened.
I find that
So,
fascinating though, what you just said is it took a little while to show up, but then when it did, it
yeah,
was like here. And I think
boom,
that
yeah,
so many people think that, this is my experience as well. It's gonna you've got to really know where you're going, and it's got to be really clear, and you've got to know the path. But actually it's more about allowing. That's what I've come to learn, like allowing yourself to find what it is that you're here for. And it might change over time. I definitely don't think I was supposed to be speaking about my galactic gifts, for example, 10 years ago. Wouldn't have made sense. I wouldn't have been ready for that, and I wouldn't have had enough human experiences, in my current lifetime, to give me the power to have the conversations that I can now have. So, the journey is an interesting one, because we're not supposed to know where we're going. I think someone said this to me, and I think this is really powerful. Someone said, it's not really about what you're doing, it's about how you're doing it. And then eventually, the things that are really for you just start to come in at the right time. So you just have to
yeah.
flow with life so much more than maybe we're used to or taught to.
Yeah, it's absolutely, it's about being taught, it's about programming, it's conditioning. It's like, because we're obviously, yeah, I see it as, I know I'm slightly older than you are, but I see it as very much a bridge between, the older generations and kind of what has been done on our world, and what is coming through with the new children coming in, and and how they're coming at a very different frequency. And we're kind of, yeah, we've kind of got a foot in both sides, which can be quite challenging. But I think, we've just been, our school education system is like, teaches you to think in a certain way and behave in a certain way, and all the expectations. And particularly if you're sensitive, you tend to be very, I certainly speak for myself, very in tune with that. So I can almost feel what's expected, and I'm like constantly going, oh, can I just challenge that? Can I rock the boat? Oh, what they're going to think? And there's a lot of programming that we are breaking through and trying to clear and pull down, so that what the souls that are coming in now, and our next generations won't have that challenge, and they can just get straight on with what it is they're here to do, which
Mm.
I think is helping us all to remember. And it's all about the heart center, and remembering that we're not human beings. Well, yeah, we are human, but we're actually souls having a human experience. And when you sort of change that perspective, rather than, it's like, oh, it's not all happening to me, I'm not a victim, it's not poor me, it's actually, this is absolutely, meant to be happening, so that I can learn about more of who I am. And yeah, I mean, the big message for me this week, and it's like everything happens in divine time, is that when you stop trying and stop pushing and stop thinking, oh, I need to do more, I need to be more, I need to kind of like make all this effort, that creates resistance. When you just go, okay, whatever's happening is meant to happen, so I'm just going to surrender to it. It's like that's when the inspiration comes in, and that's when things start to align even more. So yeah, but we've obviously been taught that everything has to be hard work, and we have to, do really well and be successful, and that's different for everybody. But yeah, there's a lot of work to do to kind of shift mindset, but equally, I think it's happening almost for us now. So
Yeah.
it's like we won't have any choice.
And I was going to ask you that because it feels to me, when I look at my own life, when I look at those that are close to me, when I see things going on in the wider world, that it's almost like, what did my guides once shown, kind of like this visual of all the things being thrown out of the trunk. Like it's all coming up for resolution, it's coming up for experience. And I guess what I bring through is that now is the time for that, because we are going to a totally different place, and the next 12 months is significant and probably beyond that. But this is like this, almost they talk about it as the peak moment, the peak opportunity to really allow that breakthrough to happen. But sometimes what we don't see in the moment as being the most helpful for our path feels tough and challenging, and sometimes the resistance, with what you were saying, is the thing that will prevent it going. It's going to go that way anyway. That's what my guides say. So you can go kicking or screaming, or you can come nicely with us.
Yeah, yeah, I know. And why would we want to, choose the former? But actually, it's almost like we're programmed to expect it to be hard work. It's like, you think about ascension is something that is going to happen to us, but actually, no, it's like it's all happening inside. I keep getting that as well. It's like it's an inside job, and it's not like waiting for the right alignments or the right people or the right activations. It's like, no, we can literally choose to make that change right now. It's like
Mm.
it's all a choice. But yeah, certainly that coming into stillness and neutrality as well has been a really key one for me, and that's where you surrender and you just sort of, okay, because that's when the deep insights can really come in.
Mm.
When you're not sort of, I guess it's like when you're neutral, you're not reacting, are you? So you just kind of come into that balance, and it's beautiful because obviously just coming back to astrology, we're in Libra season at the moment, and it is all about, I know you're a Libra, it's all about that, you know, kind of getting that balance between Aries, which is, all action and doing, and then, but also bring, yeah, the Libra, the kind of the scales and coming into that balance, and yeah, stillness. And that's where the peace is also, accessible. So yeah,
Mm.
it's not easy though, because I think we quite like drama, and we quite like things to be difficult and challenging, and because there is a mindset that if it's not hard, then, and even from a starseed perspective, I think often it's like, well, if you're not like being challenged, then how can you grow? How can you get the most out of the experience? But I think that is also a program that perhaps I'm ready to let go of.
Mm.
So
But what you said there also is interesting, because you use the word challenge. And I think this is the thing. Sometimes when things happen and they're maybe not perceived in the moment as being positive, you might say, oh, that was not a positive experience, or it was a negative experience. But if you can kind of flip it to see it as a challenge, or to see it as something that is showing you, or there's some wisdom or some gold that can come from it,
yeah,
it's a whole different thing. It's so easy to say in the moment. I mean, I've definitely had my moments where my human's just taken over, and I've gone like a little child, screaming and shouting and thinking, why is this happening to me? And we all go through that. But
yeah, of
I think,
course.
yeah, because we're human as well. So we can have all the theory, we can have, and that's why it's so helpful to have others around you, right? That can see and witness you when you're in that space. But I think, it's that understanding of something greater, that there is a point to it. There is a point to you having these experiences, whether it's clearing something for you, whether it's giving you an insight on certain behavior or a system. You know, I sometimes wondered why, and I know you had a similar journey to me through the corporate world. I sometimes wondered why it had to be it felt quite extreme, my experience. You know, I went into that world and that felt very aligned for me at the time. And then my sort of exit from that world felt really, quite dramatic. But if I'd
Yeah,
not
me
had
too.
that, there you go. But without that experience, I probably would not have my awareness to what it is now. So I'd obviously agreed on some level to experience that, so I could see the flip side of it. So I can see, the light and the dark in both places, and so bring more light to it. And that was a plan for me, which is what I'm here doing. But yeah, I mean, without the challenge, how do we learn?
Yeah, exactly. And
Yeah.
also, we're here to, because Earth is so polarized, there's polarity in everything. And so we have to, it's almost like we've signed up to experience all of it. So we have to see, what we don't want and what perhaps needs changing or modernizing or whatever word you want to use. But yeah, I think it's about, and I think again with my work, it's like sometimes being able to look at the chart and see actually, yes, I'm going through this particular challenge, but I can see how it's almost like meant to be, this is part of the design and therefore there's nothing wrong. And I think it just gives you, it's like validation. So, I mean, what I would tell anyone is like, it's not necessarily, yes, it might be new to them, it might be something they're not considered, but it's what their soul knows. So it's nothing like, I don't know, yeah, it's no surprise, I guess, but it's validation. And it's like, actually, yes, that's why, Uranus is doing this in my chart, so that's why it feels like everything has gone absolute chaotic, and it's like, okay, and it's a transit, so it's not going to be like that forever as well. So I think yeah, it's just it's reassuring in
Yeah.
a lot of ways. And yeah, I think I'm studying my chart all the time. Every time I look at it, I see something new. There's new energies coming in all the time, that either people ask me to explore or that I sort of hear about. I think, oh, and that just, there's more and more and more wisdom that comes through. So it's challenging because I feel like I can never actually get on top of my game because there's always more to learn. But equally, I'm just like, it's amazing because I never stop learning, which is, yeah, also big in my blueprint. So
Yeah,
yeah, I
exactly.
feel like I found what I was meant to do for now anyway.
Yeah, and that's amazing when you land on it, and that will probably evolve like all these things. And nothing's ever static. I always think just when you think you know what you're doing, it shifts again. So, getting used to that feeling of maybe we've been conditioned. Well, I believe we've been conditioned to think that success looks linear, but success doesn't look linear
Yeah,
because growth has to be wiggly, and like sometimes you have to go another way even to just realize that wasn't the right decision and come back and do something else, but you've taken something from that. And as you were speaking then, I was thinking about how you were saying, there's so much coming up for you, and I'm experiencing that myself on a personal level. It's pretty fluid right now, right? There's stuff coming up and down, so much abundance, so much challenge all at the same time. It's wild. I feel also what we're experiencing on a collective level. And can you
yeah,
see that from a galactic astrology perspective? One thing I'll just say before that is my guides keep saying the same statement to me, and they've said this for years, which is in order for the new to be born, there needs to be a breaking down of the old, which will feel and seem like chaos, but the chaos needs to be created to be reordered, which is fascinating.
yeah,
But I'd love to
yeah.
know, can you
Wow.
see that?
You see, like this synchronicity. Um, so I've actually written down because I did a little bit of plan. I know we were sort of going to let this conversation flow, which is, when we connect, it's like it's hard to stop the energy. But I have actually written chaos on the planet is intentional right now because we need, it's like if things don't sort of start going crazy, we would just stay complacent and it's like kind of like, that sleeping beauty type analogy, something needs to happen to wake us up. And I feel that we're almost kind of being shown the most extreme, most dramatic, most crazy kind of expression of what things can be like, in order to yeah, because there are a lot of people who are just like very attached to the status quo and the comfort zone, and they're more than happy. They don't necessarily like the way things are, but they're just going to go, oh, I don't want to kind of rock the boat, or don't want to create conflict or whatever, so I'll just keep on going and just accept it. But and then there's all these other souls that come in and like go, no, this needs to change. And I think with chaos, it's how we wake up. But I also, again, just listened to something literally before we came on. And it was a conversation with Pam Gregory, who's an astrologer that I follow, I admire hugely. And she was saying that she'd actually gone to look at the definition of chaos, because I work a lot with the Greek myths, and of course in the beginning it says there was chaos, and what actually is chaos? And it said it's the gaping void or chasm that basically existed before the creation of the universe, and from chaos is actually where rebirth comes. So we almost need to go into this state where it feels like everything is collapsing, and it is, all the structures, and that is in the astrology. We're in this time of you know endings and beginnings, but we need to yeah, everything needs to collapse so that we kind of almost come back to ground zero, and that sort of neutral space and the void where, and that's where the birth comes from. If you think that's where the womb space is this void and it's this darkness, and and that's where the life sort of is growing. So I think yeah, it's scary because it's destabilizing, and as humans we don't like change,
Mm.
but it has to happen. And I think as more and more people sort of start to go, actually, this isn't okay, and that they're challenging all the governments, and that is very Pluto and Aquarius, which is Pluto's going to be in Aquarius for the next 20 years. So there's like this huge kind of people power. It's like the ego has to die. It's like we have to come together as a collective. And and then Uranus, which is the planet of chaos and awakening and discord, is kind of moving back from, it's in Gemini at the moment. It's at 0 degrees of Gemini, which is a really powerful point. Going to go back into Earth sign Taurus for a few months, and then is going to go forward again. So again, that's waking. Uranus and Gemini is all about waking up the mind and the mindset and the understanding and the voice. So people of that. And I also see it because Uranus is very galactic in expression, and it's also linked to Aquarius, which is very galactic. There's a lot of Aquarian galactic kind of collective energy building, and that's only going to strengthen as we move into next year. So yeah, it's all about awakening, consciousness being sort of raised, and our understanding, and also I think our perspective of, which is also where galactic astrology can play a part. It's like understanding that whereas before we've seen ourselves as humans on planet Earth, and we're all very compartmentalized, and we're all on our cultures and our countries and our languages, and we're all we can see by the way the world's going is that when something happens in the world now, because we can access that information, we're starting to become more of a collective. And I think we have to get to that point so that we can then start to consider, oh well, maybe it's not just life on human life on Earth. There are other planets and other beings and other sort of societies and whatnot out there. So I think we're kind of being prepared to come into that kind of awareness that's going to ultimately pull us together, because at the moment we're very good at fighting one another, and and it's all polarized and taking sides, and different. But I think as the energy sort of move into next year, and I think things are going to happen that will be more planetary, so it makes us feel like we're all part of the same group. And
Yeah.
then we can start to consider, well, if humanity is one group, then where do we fit into the bigger picture? And I think that is when we're going to start really seeing that actually, yeah, those people that I know it's always a conspiracy theory, when people would get alien contact, and it was like, oh, just hide that, bury it. But I think yeah, it's going to become, the crazies will not be crazy anymore. I think there's a
Yeah.
lot of truth going to come out.
There's huge synergy in what you've just said with what I
Yeah,
channel. Huge synergy, and
yeah,
always this happens, so I love our conversations. But it is
yeah,
so much truth in that. The one thing that's always stuck with me that my guys regularly say is it's the separation that drives the unity. And I think it's such powerful words. And when you sit with that and
Yeah.
you think, what does that mean? You know, sometimes they say these lofty statements, and I'm like, yeah, but what do we do with that? And then over time, I've started to understand what this means. It's what you said. The more separate we become, the more we realize that this is not actually how we're supposed to live. And that's part of this awakening, is what I'm seeing. You know, all the
Yeah.
war that's happening out there, the general population aren't on board with that. You know, a lot of us are saying, let's come together. And actually, it's getting to a point where it's so uncomfortable for all of us
Mm.
that we will step up. And that's actually kind of the light in the dark. That's what they share with me. This is the light in the dark. And now,
Yeah.
unfortunately, this is the way we've gone as humanity, and we're going as humanity, but that doesn't mean that's the way it's going to be forever. And we're going to start coming together on a mass
No.
scale. And I'm seeing that. And the
Yes.
point that you make about the galactic experiences, that's so fascinating, because when I first woke up to my galactic gifts, which were, you know, and I speak about that on other episodes, so surprising to me, was not something I set out to do. It, even, you know, 5 years ago, I had zero awareness of this. That actually, when I've asked what am I supposed to do with this, my guides have often said to me, this is usually my Actuarian guides who are so present with me, and they said, because it's important for you now to speak, because in the future, others will become aware of their galactic heritage, and their galactic understanding is going to emerge over time. And it's not going to be that far away, actually, in human terms, even though, you know, for them it's like nothing. But for us, it doesn't feel like, you know, they never give me timelines, because they just don't. But they say, you know, in the near future for you, it will be that more people will understand that. And actually, then you can guide people to that understanding, because it's not
Yeah.
scary in the way that it's portrayed on
Mm.
the movies. It's not some blue being coming down here to do anything against your will. There might be different vibrations out there, like we are, you know, but not exactly the highest of vibrations at this present time. But as we evolve, we will be able to evolve our understanding of our wider understanding of the universe, which is not just separate. We're not separate from each other. We're not separate from the other beings that exist out there. And they are well outside of our current understanding, but that our understanding is going to grow and grow and grow over the next few years. And I think that you're saying the same thing here.
Yeah, yeah. I think separation is key, isn't it? Because I think that's actually where our biggest wound comes from, because we although we're not separate at all, because we never actually left, we believe we are. And I think part of coming into this lower density is almost like that's what you have to experience. And actually that's what our souls want to experience, because we want to know what it's like to be separate from source, from almost from ourselves, and to forget. But then there's like this huge powerful, like magnetic sort of energy, like literally pulling us back, calling us back to remember. And I think, you know, the separation wound is what creates the division. It's what creates the fear. It's what creates the war. You know, the power, the kind of feeling that it's us against the world. And actually, that couldn't be further from the truth. But I think we've got to get to the point where we remember, and as each of us remember, and obviously, you know, you and I remember, other people remember, and it's like this kind of, yeah, domino effect, you know, more and more and more will. And when we remember that, then we don't need to fight. We don't, because we won't see ourselves as different from anybody. We'll see, you know, the connection. And what's
Yeah.
beautiful about the Aquarian energy is like it's the collective field. It's like humanity coming together, but also not losing sight of who we are as individuals as part of that. Which is really beautiful, because we each have a unique frequency that we need to remember and sort of bring through. And then as that frequency, it connects, it's almost like a web of light. I'm kind of keep being shown. And as we sort of remember who we are, that the web sort of gets lit up and activated so that more people can remember. And yeah. And what you say about speed and like it's going to be quick. If you think about Gemini, Uranus, it's kind of like it's big, one of my favorite planets, although it can be quite challenging, but Uranus is quick anyway. But moving through Gemini, which is going to be a 7-year transit, Gemini is really quick, and it's all about communication and connection and networking. So it's like literally waking up and activating all these neural pathways, different ways of the brain. I'm kind of seeing DNA being lit up and, you know, awoken. And yeah, it's going to be really, really quick. So I think the key for us all, because there is a possibility that, a lot of people are literally going to lose their minds because the amount of energy coming in, it's like, you can almost short circuit, your system could get fried. So it's about being grounded and present and coming into that neutrality that we talked about at the beginning. So we can just, so that the energies, they're not going to stop, but if we're able to channel them and let them move through us without everything going zzz, like being fried, I think that's one of the big roles we're here to play. And yeah, grounding is like been such a strong and frequent, consistent message for me. Come into your body, because we can't actually fully ascend unless we descend fully in. We have to
Mm.
be in the body. And I think with the separation wound and the way society works, it's like everything is designed to take us out of the body, to distract us, to kind of keep us in the head, and social media and all of that. It's like, no, we have to come into that body, because that's where the heart is.
Yeah.
So yeah, and it's about experiencing it all through the heart and not kind of thinking overly with the head, which again is really difficult because we think that the mind is like the gold, and that's what
Yeah. And we've been
best part.
taught to
But
be trapped almost by the mind. So we've been taught, and this is kind of like what I see 3D reality is. 3D reality is us kind of trapping ourselves. I saw something really fascinating by, I think it was Stephen Bartlett who spoke about this, and he showed how an ant, if you draw a marker pen around an ant on a piece of paper, it walks up to the edge of the line but never over it, because it perceives that there is a line. So it can't understand that it can walk past even though nothing's stopping it. That's like us.
yeah,
I
oh
really
my
like took
God.
that and run with it, because I was like, that's such a great way of describing it. It can quite easily put his foot over, but it doesn't realise that that's possible. But then he says, once they do work it out, they can't stay inside the line.
Oh my God.
God, that is us. And I don't think Stephen Bartlett at the time, maybe he did, understood what he was describing quite really in that time. But that's it.
Wow.
That's the difference between third dimensional reality to beyond. Because once you go beyond, you realize you're not trapped by your own thoughts, you're not trapped by your own experience.
Yeah,
You can create a different scenario, and and to do that you might need to let go of something you thought you had to be or do, because actually when you are you step over the line and you actually start to experience a whole different experience. But that stepping of the line is like the almost the permission to the universe to say, oh, she's ready for something else, like we can call something else into your experience now because you're open to a new experience. So this, I think, is what
yeah,
is
yeah,
happening. And I think the more of us that
yeah,
can ground, like you're saying, back into the heart, come back and say, who am I? What do I want? Am I making decisions based on who I really am, or am I basing this decision on fear or something that somebody else has said
yeah,
outside of me? Coming back all the time to the self is so powerful.
yeah,
And you
yeah,
said earlier,
yeah,
didn't you? It's an inside out job. It absolutely is an inside out job. Like, it's so different
yeah,
to what we've been taught. We're not being taught that. We've been taught we respond to the external environment, which we can respond, but we are creating that external environment by our belief systems, our feelings, what we're experiencing. So, when,
yeah,
to the point that you made, if we short circuit a lot, we're going to keep looping. So coming back to yourself is the only way to move forwards through that.
yeah, yeah.
Mm.
And I think it's not because I've been sort of really exploring and being shown through quite challenging examples of how my mind is often against me, because I can create, and we all do it, I can create the most incredible stories and within a split second that I believe to be true because I'm thinking of it. And you go down, literally, it unravels and it goes crazy and out of control. And it's like, okay, we need to see, it's not about disconnecting the mind because our brain is really, really powerful, but it's about
Mm.
understanding how powerful our brain is and harnessing it as an ally.
Yes.
So and sort of translating everything that's in the head through the heart. So it's about feeling, is this true, is this real? And when we can start to come back into the heart and feel, and it's all about discernment as well, and it's then about using the mind and its brilliance to create our reality. So rather than kind of getting lost in the negative thoughts patterns and streams that can just go wild. I mean, isn't it crazy how we can hear something and think, have a perspective on it and filter it and suddenly have this whole story about what it means and, you know, how it affects me and all of that. But actually using the mind for what, you know, I think it was designed for, is to create. So when we think about something, we can make that a reality instantly, but we need to make sure that we're focusing on the right things, and, you know, and using it for the way it was intended, rather than using it against us. And I think, you know, when you talk about separation consciousness and conflict, you know, there are darker forces in our world that almost jump on that. But if you take it, and so, you know, mind control and, you know, programming and what we see through the TV, and, you know, and belief systems and patternings. But also, if you take it from an even higher perspective, it's almost like that is just our souls kind of creating this opportunity to experience the opposite expression of light, you know, through darkness, and what it's like to forget or to be controlled, as opposed to being free. So it's like there's always those two sides that we can experience, but it's like, what will we choose?
Mm.
But yeah, yeah, everything for me at the moment is like, come back to the heart. And I don't find it easy, because I'm very mind based. You know,
Yeah.
my chart is like really my mind and my head, and learning and thinking and speaking and writing. It's like, so it's challenging, but I think little by little, if we start to learn how to do that, I think that is also going to really help us shift. And yeah, it can happen very quickly. It
Yeah.
doesn't have to, like, you know, be 5, 10, 20 years down the
No.
line. It can be.
And I'm getting, when I'm channeling around this, is that it's going to happen anyway. Like, all of us are going to ascend.
Yeah.
I understand it as
Yeah.
like, it's not I'm not going, or someone's going this way and someone's going that way. We're just going at different speeds, if you like, or different timelines. But ultimately, the end point is the same. So it's my guides also speak about, you choose the timeline. You choose the timeline, and it's like, what they're saying with that is, you choose how much you're going to understand this stuff and respond from who you are. Each time you make that decision, you kind of elevate. So I see these sort of these patterns of, like, they show me these timelines that we can choose, and I think that's personal, but that's also collective. So I think
Yeah.
some people out there are speaking about waves. I haven't necessarily channeled that, but I feel like it's coming in waves, in that some people are experiencing this experience, like breaking out of the box quicker, and then seeing it for what it is, and being able to operate from a higher dimensional perspective, you know, maybe fourth going into fifth dimensional. And that, all that just means is, you're starting to shed the conditioning maybe faster than some others who haven't quite learnt that
Yeah.
yet. And it's going back to that remembering piece of, how much have you started to remember? The more you remember, the more you actually can't be controlled by the third dimensional systems anymore, because you know
Yeah.
something else. So it's impossible to go back. Really,
Yeah.
you know,
I
you
think
can, but you can't go.
I think the joke is that there is no time. So
Mm,
we're kind of working in a reality where we think everything is linear, but actually when you move into that higher dimension, there is
mm,
no time. So when you say everyone's waking up at different times, it's like they're not. It's just how we perceive it.
mm.
And, you know, this kind of frustration, are they going to catch up? You know, I'm further ahead, or, you know, and it's like, actually, if we can let go of that,
Yeah.
I think, you know, that takes the pressure off, doesn't it?
Yeah, and I love that,
So
because I do think there's a bit of it, it goes into a bit fear mongering to think someone's going to be left behind, or people are going to be left behind. And it can feel like that, you know, sometimes on my personal experience, I perceive that maybe I'm in a different realm sometimes to others, you know, and it can feel really weird. You're almost like an observer of that. But you know, it's releasing any judgment around where you are, where they are, where anyone is, because actually all that matters is your own experience. And that comes back again to the self and what we are personally experience, because there's no, it's not a race. It's not, also you
yeah.
might be here to experience more of those lower, you know, those lower frequencies, and enjoy it, like some people do, you know, that's okay. But if you are
Yeah.
open to higher experiences, they will come in for you when you're ready for that, and there's no button. Maybe the astrology, I don't know, maybe you can speak to that, but maybe the astrology might give you opportunities to step into that sooner, based on what comes in for you, perhaps. I don't know if you would say that.
Yeah, well, I think everything is a reflection of everything else, and it's not like it's not that the astrology dictates what happens, or even sets, you know, gives you time frames. It's just like a reflection of what is going on. So the kind of out as within, so without, and, you know, it's what's going on in the cosmos is kind of, it's all energy really, and it's how to interpret that energy. And yes, there may be certain times where things feel like more aligned, you feel more in flow, or you might feel more like we had an Aries full moon yesterday, and I was out with my friend walking the dogs this morning. They were feisty. The dogs were like yapping at everyone that we walked past. I was like, gosh, what? But it's actually Aries it can be quite feisty. It can
Mm.
be, there's lots of action and fire, and it's like tuning into the energies that are there. And I guess, yeah, just allowing, almost, it's like, okay, it's all right because there's an Aries full moon, so therefore it's fine to feel like that. But it's just following and being a reflection of the bigger theme. So I think with astrology, I can't look at a chart and say, yes, this is going to happen on this day. And
Mm.
and it's not a predictive tool, but it gives us kind of insight about the energies that we're
Yeah.
working with. And and that just helps you, I guess. It's really supportive and reassuring for me at the
Mm.
end of the day, because I think so many of us think, what the hell's wrong with me, am I going crazy?
Yeah.
And to come back where we were talking about at the beginning about how the reading I did for you was validating. It's like, actually, some people have been dropped here, and they just think, God, no one gets me. Why do people behave this way? Why is the world like this? Why do
Mm.
I feel so sensitive? And if I can then say, well, it's because your kind of core connection is with this planet, and on this particular frequency, this would be completely alien to you, which is sort
Mm.
of ironic, but it's like, oh, okay. And it's just like, it just gives you permission to be more of who you are, without feeling
Yeah.
that you're weird or different or the black sheep, and you're broken. And I think when all these kids coming in now who are being labeled neurodivergent, and all the labels that they get, it's like, no, they're just vibrating at a different frequency that we are not quite yet ready for, we're not used to, we're not familiar with. And so the systems say, oh no, there's something wrong with them, but it's like, no, they're here to lead the way and help us open our hearts.
Yeah,
And
I
yeah,
love
it's
that
beautiful,
because
actually.
the system says there's something wrong with them, but actually they're showing us
Yeah,
what's wrong with the system, and that's the point of them, that's
yeah,
why they're here.
yeah.
I have a
Total
child
reversal,
exactly like
isn't
it.
it?
Yeah, and my daughter, when she came into my world, I didn't know what to do with her, quite honestly. Like nothing. She was just nothing like anybody else's child. My experiences were really quite wild, and I thought I would just easily float into motherhood, and it was the most kind of awakening experience for me. She was the start, I guess, and she's an incredibly
Yeah.
highly sensitive star sign beyond me. Like I've become that. I started more, I would say, earth-based, and I've become more galactic. She's come in like it, and it's been a lot for me to handle it because I don't know how to experience that, and I don't know how to help her sometimes because the whole world just feels intense for her. Everything is intense, and she feels
Yeah,
then intense
yeah,
for everybody else, but she's just feeling the experience here, and she's not used to it. So it's like, I always joke, like it felt like she came in and instantly was like, "No, get me out." It felt like she just felt like the whole thing was too
Mistake.
much.
Abort, I made a mistake.
Yeah, take me
Take me
back.
back.
I didn't mean it. I didn't mean it. And it was literally from birth. And yeah, and now I witness her she's now 6. And, she's starting to understand. She's starting to feel more grounded. And my experiences of waking up in the
Yeah,
way I did have been so profoundly helpful for me to understand her. Had I not woken up to
yeah,
my own galactic experiences and understanding of when I feel these things, that now I understand that's what she's experiencing. So it's really, really powerful. But it's also really, I find, frustrating when you witness the system trying to box them back in, because you can't box these kids in. They're going to be boxed.
yeah. No, no, and that's the whole point, that all the systems have to change because they fit the old paradigm. They don't sort of belong in where we're going, but we're in this
Mm.
kind of bridge, kind of interim, where, like I say, everything is collapsing, but the new isn't quite here. And it's scary because it
Yeah.
takes a lot of faith,
Yeah.
which I keep coming back to. I just can't let go of it. I just know that where we're going is going to be incredible. And that, I guess, helps me sort of navigate, when things do seem like, oh my God, what's going on, and all the shadow coming up, and all the parts of the self that you've been trying to ignore or deny, or just like, oh no, I don't want to look at that. It's like, boom, hi.
Yeah.
Here I am. You're going to face me. You're going to accept me and love me. And oh, I know lots of people are going through that, and it's heavy going. Oh my God. But it's part of this process. And I think, we've got so much support, and we were going to talk, weren't we, about Atlas
Mm.
3i,
Yes.
um, because we just mentioned that at the beginning, and yeah, I was interested in what your kind of perspective was, if your guys had said anything
And I think this is a perfect opportunity to
about,
segue
yeah.
into that, because what you were saying about, it feels kind of dense and dark, but then at the same time, what my guides speak about is like, just focus on the pockets of light. Focus on the pockets of light. And I love
Yes.
that, because there are pockets of light. There are lots of us coming together. There are lots of things changing. And that's what I think is going on with this 3i Atlas. So what I've experienced in terms of what I've brought through around it is that we are now in this mass period of awakening, and we've been in this peak moment. They speak to me a lot about the peak moment, and there is now a shift where we're going from the dominant frequency of the lower frequencies, and those higher frequencies are more available to us. And with that, they've been sharing with me that we've been getting codes. We've been getting codes through a number of different ways. Now, as a starseed and with my connections galactically, I get given a lot of those codes either in my sleep, or I get what
Hmm.
they call my DNA upgrades when I'm in meditation, which is fascinating. You mentioned that earlier. These elevation of the DNA, more of our DNA coming online. Now, I cannot
Yeah.
explain that in my human, but maybe if I was in channel, I could probably explain it better. They show me that more of our understanding, awareness, our galactic interdimensional selves are coming online. That needs to be activated through not only our own experiences, but also from stuff that we're experiencing in our environment. So the sun, they talk to me about, the sun has codes. The sun is giving us codes which are going to help us to wake up to that multidimensional self. And what I understood is that 3i Atlas is doing the same thing. So they spoke to me as this is like a galactic technology almost. Not that it's manned, but they don't say that it's like manned by a being or anything. It's just passing through, and it contains light codes. And those codes are here to awaken humanity to their multidimensional self, more of their understanding. That remembering will start to drop in for more people. And I also love it's coming very close to the orbit around my birthday, which is, I love it. So, all of the codes. But I don't know, do you see it the same way? Because I know there's a lot of misinformation out there. I actually tuned into it because I kept on seeing online people saying it's actually a ship. I don't believe it to be a ship. That's not my understanding of it. That's not what my guide
Hmm.
said. But yeah, I'd love your interpretation of that.
Yeah. Well, again, I hadn't really sort of gone there because there's been so much hype, certainly in the kind of the social media platforms that I'm, what's coming through the algorithms, and I was just thinking, oh, sometimes it's like, look here, look here, look here, because it's almost distract you from what you're supposed to be looking at. But and I've heard and seen and read lots of different things, but what resonated for me, and you said it before, it's a tool of frequency. And I
Mm.
think in the very early days, I read somewhere that someone was saying it was kind of Lyra, and then I've heard other people saying there's lots of different galactic sort of star nations involved. But if we were to think of it as having origins in Lyra, and that instantly takes me into the, again, sort of looking at Lyra as an archetype and sort of the messages. It's about frequency, and
Mm.
it's about that tone, and kind of the pitch, like kind of ringing it out, that is going to reverberate, because we are all frequency, and that is how we're going to start communicating. So it's almost like helping us to align our frequency to more of where we need to be. And what was really interesting is that and again, my insight comes through, I read things, or people just say a word, and it's like ping, ping, ping. It's like all the pieces come together. So I read someone saying how the outer so the atlas bone in the body is actually at the top of the spine,
Mm.
and it's the part that joins the top of the spine and the base of the skull together. And I was thinking then about the alta major chakra, which I've done a lot of work with, which is kind of the bit the energy center that sort of sits behind the head and connects the throat and the third eye and the crown, and how a lot of our wisdom and our sort of if we're channeling, that tends to be a lot where the energy will come in. But it's like, it feels to me like frequency that is designed to realign us, and it does feel actually it's going to work on the physical, and that
Mm,
would make sense if it is has got Lyran connections. I'm not saying it is Lyran at all, but I feel it kind of feels like home in a way, and Lyran is like the cradle of galactic human history, so it's kind of it feels very ancient but modern as well, and it feels like yeah, it's going to it's communicating or sending us a frequency that is going to help us, I guess, realign, but also remember.
mm,
And that's the other word that just keeps coming. It's like we know it all. We know who we are. We know everything, but we've just forgotten. And it's about remembering,
yeah.
um, and that's, I think surely it takes less effort to remember something than
Mm.
it does to learn. It's just, it's innate within us.
My guides just came in when
So
you were speaking then and said that they wanted to say that it is an opportunity. So it's giving us an opportunity to elevate to the frequencies that it's bringing forward. So I guess what they're trying to say, and they may correct me if
perfect. Yeah.
I don't get it right, but I think that's what they're trying to say is like everyone's got a choice in this ascension. No one is going to push you into a
Yeah.
higher timeline. So if you choose it, it's available to you. So I think if you see that as a tool that gives them more access, more opening, an opportunity to remember, but you've got to do the remembering. You've got to be active in the process.
Yeah. Yeah, it's true. It's all there, and just because certain things, if I come back to astrology, and that because that's my language, just because things, are a certain way in your blueprint and your natal chart doesn't mean that you're necessarily going to act on it. It's there. It's like the blueprint is there, the energy is there. It's like Atlas 3, it's there, but not everybody wants to, or it's not that they're ready to, but yeah, absolutely, it's a choice.
Yeah.
And we have to be open, and I think many of us are.
Yeah.
But yeah, I think just going back to the whole, it's an inside job. It's not seeing whatever Atlas 3i is as something coming to save us or to fix us or to necessarily change anything. It's just, I don't know, I keep thinking, is it even sort of a version of ourselves that almost, we've kind of, and again, from a human perspective, you might say it's from the future, but it just feels like it's just another tool that we can call on. And it's like, here we are. If you want to, take advantage, then do. But yeah, and like I say, it's passing through, and it's going to be, I think. Again, I've read different things, but I think they're saying it's going to be closest to the Earth or in December near the solstice, I think. It's
Mm.
yeah, I've been tracking it a little bit on the Sky app, but yeah, certainly these 3 months which feel pivotal, and it's the last 3 months in the year 9, which is all about endings and releasing and letting go so that we can, almost create that blank slate and move into next year and really start creating. Yeah, it's interesting that it's moving through at this time when it's
Yeah.
like we need to shed all of what we are not in order to remember what we are.
Yeah.
So
That's
yeah.
beautiful. And I guess I have one last question for you because what you said
Yeah.
there is really powerful. So we've talked about Three Eye Atlas coming in. That's a significant point. You mentioned the solstice, the next 3 months being really powerful. I keep getting information around December being a particularly pivotal moment for us on a collective level. I'm not sure what that means. I'd need to channel more to understand what they mean. But I'd love to know, like, is there anything in the next sort of between the 3 to 6 months that you're seeing from the galactic astrology perspective, you know, or even is it just that solstice moment maybe that is really pivotal? What might we expect to tune into and work with the astrology over the next 3 to 6 months?
Um, I think we're at this kind of time which is unprecedented where all the outer planets, and I'm talking about the outer planets in our solar system, which kind of affect us collectively, and because they're slow moving, like Pluto, Uranus, Neptune, Saturn, they're all kind of coming to the end of one sign and moving into the other. And this year has been interesting because they all moved into the beginning of their new sign and now they're on their way back. So at the moment, everything's in retrograde, which again takes us within. So we're kind of in this like wrapping up type energy, which again is synchronistic with the number 9 year that we're in 2025, and the fact that we're in the last 3 months. And I'm always like 369 always seem to be quite critical numbers about frequency. And yeah, it just feels like we're kind of coming back. The next 3 months feels like a real opportunity just to review everything and kind of, there's going to be a lot of endings and closure and tying up loose ends, I feel, so that when we move into sort of early, it's kind of probably more spring 2026 is when things are really going to start shifting. But there's a big conjunction with Saturn and Neptune at 0 degrees of Aries in February, and that's the 0 point. 0 Aries is the beginning of the whole zodiac, and their meeting is like structure, mastery meets spirituality and vision, and they meet together at this like creator point, which is like wow. And then I said Uranus is going to move back into Gemini, and it'll be all like literally boom speed everything, like it's go time, I think, when that happens, because Gemini is just there's so many fixed stars in Gemini that Uranus is going to move through and activate, and yeah, so I think it's about having faith that, I guess, from the chaos comes the most beautiful potential, and we have to go through whatever's going to happen that may feel really destabilizing, over the coming months in order to come out of the other side. And often it's through, I'm reminded as well that because we're in the year of the snake, if you think of the snake, it's all about shedding skins and regeneration and rebirth. But also with the snake, it's like the bite, the venom, which is the poison, is actually the medicine. And it's almost like we need to feel that pain. It's like you need that sting. You need something to remind you that actually you are here and it is real, and that to awaken you up, I guess. So yeah, I mean, I don't want that to sound pessimistic or scary, because it's not. I mean, I don't see it in that way at all. But it's like, yeah, I think it's going to be interesting 3 months, but also very exciting, because I think more people are going to just remember, by virtue of what's going on in our world, just go, actually, this can't be, it can't be true, it can't be real, it can't be right. We have to make some changes. And I think we're into next year, which is a 1 year, which is all about new beginnings. And then we've got all the outer planets sort of starting in their new signs. Yeah, it's going to be really quite incredible. So we'll have to see.
That sounds like an exciting kind of way to phrase it. It's like that moment of being in the cocoon, ready to come into something
Yeah,
totally new next year, trying to kind of ground into the newness and the excitement, and also recognizing that some stuff that's going needs to go to be able to access
yeah.
that. I was hearing when you were saying it was like collective, what did they say to me? Collective elevation, collective new levels. That's what we're experiencing
Wow.
personally, and collective new levels. So yeah, exciting times as we roll into 2026.
Yeah, yeah, bring it on.
Yeah,
This is why we're here. So,
exactly. I have loved this
yeah,
conversation, and I always love our conversations. And really
yeah,
feel
me
like
too.
if we were in the same room for a period of 24 hours, we'd still continue to have something to say to each other. It's ridiculous, but amazing. And I love the synergy between what I bring through and what you're seeing in the astrology and how you interpret it. It's amazing. So thank you so much for being here, for being on the show. And
Absolute
yeah,
pleasure.
I will put all your links in the show notes. So if anyone wants to connect with Louise and understand more about their galactic astrology, then all the links will be there. And if anyone wants to chat to me about galactic channeled experiences, galactic guidance, or even support with their business, then my links will be below as well. So thanks so much, Louise, and we will speak soon.
You're welcome. Thank you.